Thank you so much for being willing to do this. I'm really excited about launching this kind of initiative to open up the conversation about grief and normalize it and give insight into what it's like to be a parent that's lost a child. And I wanted to start with share us a little bit about Billy. We start with one of the things that we do at the beginning retreats with sharing 5 words that describe him.
Okay. So my son is Billy. The 5 words for Billy are funny and adventurous, willful, so smart. That's 2 words, but very smart. And then mischievous, because he was mischievous.
About your words, it's like it's not painting him as a saint. It's him as a person and the reality and the complexity. And I think we kind of forget sometimes with people that have.
Mm-hmm. I find that we shoot our kids up on this pedestal when we lose them, as we should, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it kind of, for me, takes some realism out of it. And Billy was kind of a shit sometimes.
Which all kids are, all humans are. One thing that you can think of, either with Ohana Oasis or just in general, one really long-lasting thing that's impacted you in not just the death of Billy, but in the healing or the growing and evolving over the years since then?
Probably the biggest impact is been the pain. And then watching it evolve, feeling it evolve into where it's not this blinding, numbing pain, into where it's just a part of my everyday life, but I've wrapped around it and embraced it as a part of my life. And that's probably been the biggest impact. And then finding my own voice, which is what happened with Ohana Oasis, finding my own voice to be like, no, I lost a child and I love him and he's a part of my family. And if I want to talk about it, you're going to listen.
You've somewhat changed who you hang out with to where now you're around people and surround yourself with people that you can say, no, you're going to listen, versus before you didn't have those kind of people in your life.
Yeah, and I did have to change my group because a lot of my group was really uncomfortable with it. Some of them would say to me, well, I don't want to talk about stuff like that because I can't imagine it. And the worst thing for, I think, anybody is when somebody just pushes it aside and expects you to be okay. And I actually had people say, I wish you hadn't gone to Hawaii to Ohana Oasis because you came back different.
You're
not my people. They were not my people. Yeah, they were not my people.
I'm so glad you recognized that. What's been the most surprising thing to you in your experience of losing a child?
How taboo it is to talk about it. And I think it brings up a lot of fears for other people, because just like I said a minute ago, people are like, I can't think about that. I don't want to think about that. I can't imagine it. And so you get shut down very quickly. And then the other thing that surprised me is the people who have lost children. You almost, whenever anybody that even if you don't know them that well, when they lose a child, you relive it. You know, it just takes you right back to that moment. And that surprises me.
Yeah. I almost felt like people thought it was contagious. Like if they got too near me and talked about it too much, they might catch losing a kid. Did it feel like that to you?
Well, that happened, but probably more so what happened to me is people that I was close to who had children the same age. I had people actually say to me, I don't want you coming around anymore because I don't want you to latch onto my child to replace Billy.
Wow.
And so I had friendships that way but I never had looked at their children and been like, oh, you have to be mine now. And so a lot of misconception around it, you know, around what people felt like they, you know, should or shouldn't do, and then a lot of them do nothing or are stupid.
Do you feel like you had a hard time, and it may be that you live in a smaller community and so everybody knew, so this may not be applicable to you, but did you ever find that like people would ask you, like you're meeting somebody new and they'd ask you about yourself, and inevitably people ask, you know, how many kids do you have, or like what have you been up to, or those awkward moments of, do you share about Billy? Do you not share? How do you share? Did you come up against those? And if you did, how do you handle them?
So I, in the beginning, made the decision that I have 5 children, and that I would always say that I had 5 children. I did a couple times say, oh, I have 4 kids, just didn't feel right to me. So I always say I have 5 children. And if they push me, it truly depends on my mood. Well, where are they? What are they doing? And if I am never going to see them again, if it's a lady that's giving me a pedicure, I have before like made up story. Well, I have a 22-year-old son and he lives close by. If it's somebody that I know I'm going to have a future with in professional or friendship terms, I just tell them. And the truth, I lost them. And if they want to ask questions, I'm pretty open. I'm always been open about it.
So what's been the biggest ongoing struggle over the years? If you still have any, you may not have any at this point.
Yeah, no, I just, I terribly miss my child. And probably one of the ways that manifests itself the most is seeing other kids his age and what they're accomplishing. We're coming up on 9 years here in a couple weeks, and it's on the forefront of your mind even after 9 years.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's probably been the ongoing thing, is that I just really, really miss my son.
So for those anniversaries and birthdays, and even holidays, have you figured out anything that you do like as a tradition, or does it evolve every year?
So at Christmas time in particular, Billy loved the sparkling cider, the Martinelli's sparkling cider. So I always buy a bottle right after Thanksgiving and I just set it on my table. And we don't even really talk about it. My kids know why. My husband knows why, that it's there and that it symbolizes for me, him being with us. And then about New Year's, we open the bottle and we'll drink it. And that's been an ongoing almost 9-year tradition for us at Christmas. Birthdays, the other days I'm not, the other days I just kind of am a little reflective, but I would say that's the only real tradition.
I like that because it's nice and simple, and yet it's very meaningful, but it's not some big, huge thing that you have to try to replicate every year and feel guilty if you don't. Can you name like 1 or 2 of the biggest lessons that you've learned from loss? Because you are such an example of taking loss as a catalyst for growth and being somebody that's their bigger, fuller, better selves after a tremendous loss versus shrinking down.
I think the biggest takeaway for me with grief is that if you push it down, it will drown you. You won't, and you can't recover until you just start to go through it and face it and learn how to honor your child and keep your life. And part of being present in your life and looking towards the future is part of honoring Billy for me. So that's my biggest takeaway about grief is you can't just pretend like it didn't happen and try to keep it all together for everybody. You have to just go through it, and it stinks. And I hate it for everybody. I hate it for myself. I hate it for you. I hate it for everybody. I wish it didn't happen, but if you try to ignore it, it will drown you.
Yeah. Well spoken. And yeah, you touched on like in the retreats, we go through honoring the past, living in the moment, embracing the future. And in order to be able to live in the moment, you do have to honor the past and integrate the past into the present. So that's really cool. And you've embraced the future as well, still bringing along the past with you in a really healthy way. So that's really cool. It's in your daily life that you integrate Billy's memory or honor him just in the way that you go about life?
So anytime, and I have other friends, and it's funny because it's trickled down to my children and some of my friends because they know that I do this. Anytime I see an eagle or a hawk, I just say, hi, Billy. And it doesn't matter if I'm on the phone. And I don't even know why I do that. I don't know why I took that as a symbol of him being close by. And then Billy never, even though there might be days or weeks that he doesn't come up in a conversation, he's always in the forefront of my thoughts. There was a situation just today, I saw a TikTok that I loved about mommy loves you and no matter what, I'm going to be here for you. And I've never done this before. And like I said, 9 years, almost 9 years out from his death, I sent it to his phone number, because I still have him as in my contact on my phone. And I sent it to him. And then I put a little thing, listen, I don't know who you are, but this was my deceased son's number. And I just felt the need to say hello to him today. And nobody responded. Nobody might even have that number. I don't care if they have the number or not. But it was important to me in that moment. And I don't know why I did it, but I did, and that's okay. But
something like that, you have no idea who on the other end may have received that and needed to hear that message. Because things happen in wild ways like that. And I love that you talked about the eagle or the hawk as a symbol, because I think a lot of parents either have a symbol or want one but feel weird about it, and that's just like, so for me it's ladybugs, because Allison loved ladybugs and had her second birthday was her ladybug 2 birthday, and then for her third she requested it again. And everybody has their own belief system, but I have found time and time again that even when kids are gone, they somehow do send messages down, and we all find our own special thing. And it seems obvious to you, like, oh yeah, well, it's eagles and hawk, and I don't know why it came, but it's clearly that. And you don't even have to question it, because it did come, and it's completely different for you than it is like for me. And it makes total sense to me that it would be ladybugs. And what do you wish someone had told you at the beginning of your journey in losing Billy?
It's really going to hurt, and lean on the people that you can trust to let you hurt, and let it hurt. And don't try to run from it. Don't try to push it away. Don't try to hide from it. We can't all put on the happy face all the time, and you can't, you have families to take care of or whatever. And I understand that, I do too. But I just ran from it for 1.5 years. I ran from it, and it actually caused more damage than if I had just faced it straight off. But right now, that's always, lately has been my biggest thing that I would love to tell other parents. It's okay to be sad. This was your child. It is your child, and it is okay, and just feel it.
So are there any tools that you discovered or used? Because, I remember personally, like, the pain can be so immense that you feel like you're not going to be able to get out of it. Or like you said, you have responsibilities, and so it's not always convenient, or you're not able to be in that pain all of the time. So did you find things that worked for you to be able to navigate being in that deep pain, but then also having some relief from it, either when you couldn't take it anymore or when situation just wouldn't allow for it?
So that's 2 parts for me, because when I just couldn't take it anymore, I remember I would lay on my living room floor and just watch my ceiling fan and cry and sob. And it was because it was such a mundane, monotonous, and I didn't have to focus on anything else. But then the tool, which is one of my favorites at Ohana Oasis that I learned, is the Be Right Back. And I utilize that a lot. Like, okay, I have a meeting. I cannot get into this right now, and I'm feeling very overwhelmed with emotion. When can I come back to this? And I'll actually put it in my phone. I'll schedule it.
Because a lot of people watching this may not know what the Be Right Back is. So do you want to explain it?
Sure. Well, for me, and we get more in depth in it when we are in the retreats or the virtual courses. But as an example, like if I'm driving down the road to a meeting and start thinking about Billy and get very overcome, I just will pocket it. I'll schedule the time that I know I can come back to it and address it. Whether it takes me half a day or whether I just need an hour, I'll take that time. And I don't just swallow it down and go, okay, I've got to move on with my day. I recognize it, I address it, and then you learn, I guess, somewhere in your subconscious, like, it's okay to table this right now, because you learn to trust yourself that you will address it. Because if you don't, it just is going to hit you harder the next time and be terrible. But
I think it's great. I think it is. I mean, I came up with that tool from my own experience. I know that it works. And I think that one of the things that you touched on that's so important is that you do need to be accountable to yourself. Like if you say, okay, I'm going to put this in the be right back list, to come back to it, because you do at some level, whether it's subconsciously, unconsciously, whatever, your body and your psyche learns like, oh, I can trust you. If you tell me that you're going to come back to this and come back to it, I can actually set it aside now versus keep repeating it. So it's important to hold that promise to yourself. And it sounds like you do. I think that's
absolutely.
It's a powerful thing. Have you found that when you do give yourself the time in the room for it, that it doesn't feel as overwhelming and take as much time as you think that it will, because you're actually giving it space instead of it having to push and fight for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are times that I might only need 15 minutes to just really sit, almost like a meditation of sorts, to just really sit and go, okay, this is how I was feeling today. Why did I feel this way? And it always leads to a good place. I have yet to have it take me somewhere dark. It always leads to light for me, because my son is light. Like, you know, it's not a, his death has been a dark experience, but his presence with me now is not dark. And so it always takes me somewhere positive if I'll just allow it to happen.
I love that. Oh, I'm so glad that you touched on that, because that's one of the scary things about like delving in deep is I think a lot of people are afraid if you delve in deep, it's going to get dark, and it's just going to get darker. And to recognize that, yeah, at the end of it, it is light, because your child is ultimately light.
Yeah. And I think that's a time issue too, because I think if you're really newly into it, you can't find the light yet. You haven't seen it. You know, the pain is still it hasn't become a part of you yet. It's still too new.
You're still in the weeds of the tunnel. You can't see that you're not around the bend to be able to see the light yet.
Yeah, you can't see what's happening yet, but I think that is a time issue too, to be able to look at it and really go, all positive. Terrible day, but all positive with the emotions.
Is it just a time issue, or is it a time and working through it issue?
Oh, like I said earlier, I don't know where I would be if I hadn't gotten some help and some tools. And I did that specifically with Ohana Oasis. So it's absolutely the tools, because I just floundered around for a couple years fighting everything and everybody, fighting with, fighting with my husband, fighting with my other kids, trying to be normal and floundering. So it's tools.
Yeah, I think that at least in my experience, and what I found with a lot of other parents is in that first couple of years, you don't even realize it in that first couple of years, but you're so lost in the sauce, for lack of a better way of putting it, that like, there's like, you're just in this fog and you don't even realize you're in the fog until you kind of start to get out of it. And then you can look back and go, oh, wow, I couldn't see anything.
Right.
And it is what it is. It's part of the process.
Yeah, definitely.
So what advice would you give, or I guess any other advice that you would give to a grieving parent?
The best thing you can do, I wish someone had told me that it's okay to talk about it. And that if people are not allowing me to talk about it, to change my group. We've already talked about that. I wish I'd known that sooner, because I get shut down because it would make people uncomfortable. And I just kind of figured that's how people were until I got over to Ohana Oasis, and I was like, wait, everybody goes through this. Like, everybody that's lost a child gets shut down and people don't want to talk about it, and it becomes taboo. And to be forgiving, because people do say stupid things. And it's really easy. I've always said that death brings out the worst in people. And so to be forgiving, but also to stand in your own ground and honor your child. And it's okay, because they're your babies. But I remember my husband, Terry, he got called away on work for just one night. He was gone one night and he was like, "Are you going to be okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And it had been 3 months. I was not okay. I was not ready to be left alone. And I was not okay. And people just don't get that. The time frame. I needed to be handled with kitty gloves. And you know me, I don't come across as someone that needs to be handled carefully, but I really needed to be handled gently for at least about a year and a half before I was able to kind of integrate into the pain, really.
Yeah. I think,
So,
and thank you for sharing that, because I think that that's hard for people to grasp if they haven't been through it. And it's not news that people that are on the sideline supporting like to hear. Because
everybody you talk to that has lost a child has their moments where they were just like, "You guys suck," where they were just like, "This is stupid. You can't be in my tribe." But one of my most impactful things was Billy died in the middle of April, on the 14th of April. And then my friend group at the time was planning a camping trip for Memorial Weekend. So it had been less than 6 weeks, about 6 weeks when we were they invited us to go camping. And I just was not up for it. I just wasn't. And I told my friend that I can see it. We were sitting in her driveway talking to her, Terry and I, and she said, "Are you going to come?" And I just said, I don't feel up to it. I just don't have the energy and I don't feel up to it and I wouldn't be any fun. And she's like, "Well, maybe you should come and that would be a great time to just let it go and move on." I don't, and people say things like that without realizing how absolutely damaging it is, not to your grief, because you're working through that anyway, but to your friendships and to the way that you view people that you can trust. I've never trusted her again.
the whole thing of it's okay to weed out the people that they may have been great friends at a different point in your life, but in this new stage of your life, you've had new experiences. If there are people that no longer serve, and serve's a bad word, but no longer fit because you're in a different place and you have different priorities, that's okay. Create the space for other people to show up, because they will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's one thing that you'd like to share with people about losing a child?
We, meaning the people who have, our club would never wish that on you. Realize the strength that it took to just get out of bed, to breathe without it hurting every day. You would be in awe of the strength of these parents. They're amazing. And we never forget. We never forget the laughter. We don't forget the pain. We never forget our child and what they meant to us and their place in our families. They're always just a part of our family and just as much real to us as the kids that you physically see. I am always amazed with the parents I meet and their strength and their ability to integrate into the pain, because time does not heal it. It just becomes part of who you are, and you hit a new normal, and then you do the best you can.